putting drummers in there really until we got him back, because he is the real sound with the rest of the guys. It's the real deal, you know.
Malcolm Young, the rhythm guitarist of AC/DC, was more than just the foundation of the band. He was the energy that shaped their unforgettable sound. A true icon in rock music, Malcolm's story goes beyond just his guitar skills and the loud crowds. But what was his life like? Let's dive into his life, uncovering his beginnings, challenges, and the lasting impact he left behind. Ready? Let's rock. Malcolm Young was a music legend in Australia. He was the rhythm guitarist, backing vocalist, and a founding member of the hard rock band AC/DC. Except for a brief absence in 1988, he was a member of AC/DC from its inception until retiring for health reasons. From the start, Malcolm had a clear vision. He wanted their music to be loud, powerful, and full of energy. He wasn't the one doing wild solos or wearing school uniforms on stage, but Malcolm was the backbone of the band. His guitar playing gave AC/DC its steady, powerful sound. Fans said he was like the engine of a fast car, making everything run smoothly. Malcolm worked hard, writing songs and guiding the band's direction. When they played live, his sharp chords and steady rhythm made the music feel strong and unstoppable. Over the years, AC/DC became one of the greatest rock bands of all time, with hits like Highway to Hell and Back in Black. Though his co-bandmate and brother, Angus, was often in the spotlight, those who knew AC/DC understood that Malcolm was the quiet leader. He made sure the band stayed true to its sound and spirit. In 2003, AC/DC was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It was a proud moment for the brothers, who had built something incredible together. In 2014, Malcolm had to leave the band because of his health. He had dementia, a disease that slowly takes away memory and thinking skills. Even after stepping down, Malcolm gave his blessing for the band to keep going. AC/DC continued, but it was never quite the same without him. Although Malcolm stepped away from the spotlight forever, he left his mark in the industry. The world lost a rock and roll giant, but his music lives on. Every time an AC/DC song blasts through a speaker, you can hear Malcolm's steady rhythm driving the music forward, just as he always did. What role did his formative years play in the man he became? Malcolm Mitchell Young was born on the 6th of January, 1953 in Glasgow, Scotland. He grew up in a big, hard-working family. His father, William Young, did many different jobs. He worked at a rope factory, operated machines, and even served in World War II as a flight engine mechanic. After the war, he worked as a builder's helper and later became a postman. Malcolm's mother, Margaret, stayed at home to take care of the family. Life in Glasgow wasn't easy, but the Youngs were strong and stuck together. In 1963, when Malcolm was just 10 years old, something happened that changed their lives forever. That winter was one of the coldest in Scotland's history. Snow piled up as high as 8 feet, and life became even tougher. Around that time, a TV advertisement appeared, offering Scottish families a chance to move to Australia for a fresh start. The idea of warmer weather and better opportunities was too good to pass up. So, in late June that year, 15 members of the Young family packed their bags and set off for Australia. Remember, Malcolm was just 10 years old. Along with him were his younger brother Angus and his older brother George, their eldest brother Stephen, their only sister Margaret, and another brother, William Jr., also made the journey. 2 other brothers, John and Alex, didn't join them. John had already moved to Australia earlier, and Alex stayed behind in Europe to follow his passion for music. He later joined a band called Grapefruit. When the Young family arrived in Australia, everything felt new and different. The weather was warm, the sky was bright, and life seemed full of possibilities. Malcolm and his siblings settled into their new home and slowly adapted to the Australian way of life. They didn't have much, but they had each other and music. Malcolm grew up surrounded by music. His brother George became a successful musician with the band The Easy Beats, which inspired Malcolm and Angus to pick up guitars of their own. They spent hours practicing, strumming chords, and dreaming of starting their own band. That dream did come true when Malcolm and Angus formed AC/DC. The band went on to become one of the greatest rock bands of all time. But it all started with a little boy from Glasgow who moved halfway across the world with his family, chasing a better life. Growing up in a family where music was everywhere became more than just a hobby. It was a tradition, passed down from one brother to the next. Malcolm once explained that all the males in the Young family played music. His oldest brother, Stevie, played the accordion. Then there were Alex and John, the first ones to pick up guitars. As the younger brothers watched and listened, the music naturally made its way to George, then to Malcolm, and finally to the youngest, Angus. When the Young family arrived in Australia, they didn't have much. Their first home was at the Villawood Migrant Hostel. It wasn't a proper house. They lived in small curved metal shelters called Nissen huts. These huts were basic and cramped, offering little privacy or comfort. Life at Villawood was tough, but it was also where things began to change for the Youngs. George, who was older than Malcolm and Angus, made a friend at the hostel named Harry Vanda. Harry was also a migrant, and like George, he had a deep love for music. The two clicked instantly, spending hours playing guitar and dreaming of starting a band. This friendship would later become incredibly important, not just for George, but for the entire Young family. After some time, the Youngs moved out of the hostel and into a semi-detached house. It wasn't fancy, but it was a step up from the huts at Villawood. The house became a place filled with music. Guitars were always lying around, and someone was always playing. In the evenings, George would teach Malcolm and Angus what he knew. Malcolm quickly fell in love with the guitar. He loved the way it felt in his hands and the powerful sound it made when he strummed the strings. He practiced constantly, learning the art of rhythm guitar, the steady, driving sound that would later make AC/DC famous. The Young household was never quiet. Music poured out of the small Burwood house, filling the neighborhood with rock and roll. Malcolm and Angus would jam for hours, inspired by their older brothers. George and Harry Vanda formed a band called the Easy Beats, and they became huge in Australia. Watching George's success made Malcolm and Angus dream even bigger. Malcolm's love for music grew stronger every day. He wasn't interested in being flashy or showing off. It was just him and his love of music. Malcolm's journey wasn't just about music. It was about family, hard work, and the courage to start over. But what was his career path like? Before AC/DC became one of the biggest rock bands in the world, Malcolm Young's musical journey had a few interesting stops along the way. In the early 19, Malcolm and his younger brother Angus joined a band called the Marcus Hook Roll Band. This wasn't just any band. It was a project led by their older brother George Young and his music partner Harry Vanda. George and Harry were already successful musicians, known for their work with the Easy Beats, and they wanted to experiment with some new sounds. The Marcus Hook Roll Band wasn't meant to be a serious long-term project. It was more like a fun jam session between talented musicians who loved rock and roll. They recorded an album called Tales of Old Granddaddy, which was released only in Australia. The album didn't make much noise at the time, but it became legendary later because it was one of the first times Malcolm and Angus played together on a record. Around the same time, Malcolm was also part of other music projects. He played guitar on a song called Evie by Stevie Wright. Stevie was the former lead singer of the Easy Beats, and the song was written and produced by George Young and Harry Vanda. Evie was no ordinary song. It was 11 minutes long and had 3 distinct parts. Malcolm played the fiery guitar solo in part 1, showcasing his raw talent and ability to make a guitar sing. Malcolm even played in a short-lived band called the Velvet Underground, but not the famous American band with Lou Reed. This was a local group based in Newcastle, Australia. It didn't last long, but every experience added to Malcolm's skills as a musician. By 1973, Malcolm was ready to start something new. He was 20 years old, full of ideas, and ready to create a band that had power, energy, and a sound like no other. He turned to his younger brother, Angus Young, who was only 18 at the time. Malcolm took the role of rhythm guitarist, while Angus played lead guitar. They brought in Colin Burgess on drums, Larry Van Crite on bass, and Dave Evans as the singer. Now they needed a name. One day, they noticed the letters AC/DC on the back of their sister Margaret's sewing machine. The letters stood for Alternating Current Direct Current, a reference to electricity. But to the Young brothers, it meant something else. It felt powerful, electric, and perfect for the band's raw energy. And just like that, AC/DC was born. Their first single was called Can I Sit Next to You Girl? It was catchy and full of attitude, but later, they re-recorded it with a new singer named Bon Scott, and that version became legendary. By 1975, AC/DC moved to Melbourne, and things really started to take off. The band's sound was taking shape, raw, loud, and full of energy. Malcolm's steady rhythm guitar created a strong foundation, while Angus's wild solos soared above it. They were unstoppable. Malcolm's journey to AC/DC wasn't instant. It was built on years of learning, playing, and jamming with family and friends. Every band, every recording, and every lesson shaped him into the rock and roll powerhouse that would soon change music forever. AC/DC was more than just a band. It was the sound of electricity, born from the hands of two brothers who never stopped chasing the perfect riff. In early 1977, AC/DC was starting to make a name for themselves, and their music was catching on in Europe. That year, they got the chance to go on tour with the legendary band Black Sabbath. It was a huge moment for Malcolm Young, his brother Angus, and the rest of AC/DC. Touring with such a famous band meant they were getting closer to rock stardom. On the road, things weren't always smooth. While AC/DC's singer, Bon Scott, and Black Sabbath's frontman, Ozzy Osbourne, hit it off and became fast friends, not everyone got along so well. One night, things got tense between Malcolm and Black Sabbath's bassist, Geezer Butler. Malcolm later claimed that Geezer pulled a knife on him during a heated argument. Geezer denied it ever happened, but the story became one of those wild rock and roll tales that people still talk about today. That same year, another big change happened. AC/DC's bassist, Mark Evans, left the band. He said that disagreements with Angus and Malcolm played a big part in his departure. Finding the right chemistry in a band is tough, and sometimes personalities clash. Cliff Williams stepped in to replace Evans, bringing a solid bass sound that helped anchor AC/DC's music. As AC/DC's fame grew, so did the pressures of life on the road. Malcolm was the heart of the band, but he was also battling personal struggles. In 1988, while AC/DC was on their Blow Up Your Video World Tour, Malcolm had to step away. Alcohol had become a problem, and he knew he needed to get help. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was necessary. While Malcolm focused on getting sober, the band continued with a familiar face. His nephew, Stevie Young, filled in for him on tour. Malcolm fought hard to get his life back on track. After facing his demons, he returned to AC/DC, stronger and more focused than ever. He stayed with the band for decades, playing rhythm guitar with the same fire and precision that had defined AC/DC's sound from the beginning. From 1973 to his last live show in 2013, Malcolm toured the world almost non-stop for 37 years. Night after night, city after city, he stood on stage, laying down the riffs that powered AC/DC's biggest hits. Even when he wasn't in the spotlight, Malcolm was the band's steady hand, the quiet leader who kept things on track. Soon, Malcolm's health began to decline. Dementia was taking its toll, and he made the heartbreaking decision to step away from the band for good. Once again, Stevie Young stepped in to take his place, keeping the Young family's legacy alive. But even after he left, Malcolm's music remained. When AC/DC worked on their album Power Up, rumors spread that they were using guitar tracks Malcolm had recorded as far back as 2003. It was as if his spirit was still there, guiding the band he had helped build. What was his life like after leaving AC/DC? Malcolm Young's final years were a difficult time, but they showed just how much strength and love he had for his music, his family, and AC/DC. His health struggles began quietly, hidden behind the roar of the band's guitars and the bright lights of the stage. After the massive Black Ice World Tour, Malcolm got some scary news. He was diagnosed with lung cancer. Luckily, the doctors caught it early. Malcolm underwent surgery to remove the cancer, and the treatment was a success. He survived the fight, but his health wasn't what it used to be. On top of that, Malcolm also had a heart problem. To help his heart keep a steady rhythm, Doctors implanted a small device called a pacemaker. Even with these health issues, Malcolm remained strong. He was quiet about his struggles, never wanting to be the center of attention. For him, the music was always what mattered most. As things got worse, Malcolm became seriously ill and could no longer play like he used to. Then he left the band. However, Brian Johnson, AC/DC's lead singer, quickly reassured everyone that the band wasn't done yet. He explained that they were still planning to get together and jam in May 2014 in Vancouver. But by the time those recording sessions came around, Malcolm wasn't there. Instead, his nephew, Stevie Young, stepped in to play rhythm guitar. As time passed, it became evident that Malcolm wouldn't be returning. The band's management made an official statement confirming his retirement from AC/DC. It was a difficult moment, but the band assured fans they would continue with Malcolm's support. Malcolm's health continued to decline, and he passed away in 2017. The rock world mourned the loss of a legend, but his music lives on, carried by the thunderous sound of AC/DC, the band he built with his bare hands. Malcolm Young's final years were marked by a difficult battle with dementia, a disease that slowly took away his memories, but never his love for music. It was a heartbreaking time for his family, his bandmates, and fans all over the world. In interviews, Malcolm's younger brother, Angus Young, revealed that Malcolm had started showing symptoms of dementia even before AC/DC recorded their album, Black Ice. During the Black Ice World Tour, Malcolm was already receiving treatment while continuing to perform. He showed incredible determination, pushing through night after night, but it wasn't easy. Angus also revealed just how hard Malcolm fought to stay on stage. During those last tours, Malcolm had to relearn AC/DC's songs before every show. He would spend hours rehearsing, playing the same riffs over and over again just to keep them in his mind for the performance. For Malcolm, giving up wasn't an option. As Angus said that even with his health, Malcolm was touring until he couldn't do it anymore. Though dementia took his memory, it never took his passion or the legacy he built. Malcolm Young was more than just a guitarist. He was the backbone of AC/DC, the steady rhythm that held the band together. Even as the disease took hold, his music endured, reminding everyone what true rock and roll sounds like. Malcolm's funeral was held the same year of his death at St. Mary's Cathedral in Sydney, where family, friends, and loved ones gathered to say goodbye to a man who had shaped the sound of rock music forever. Though he was no longer physically with them, Malcolm's legacy lived on in the music he created, and his brothers in AC/DC vowed to continue playing in his honor. The world may have lost Malcolm, but his rhythmic guitar and songs would continue to inspire rock and roll for generations. What influenced his music, and what legacy did he leave behind? A few days after Malcolm Young passed away, a street artist stood in front of a blank wall in the city, looking at the empty space. The artist felt inspired to honor Malcolm's memory, to create something that would forever capture the essence of the man who helped define AC/DC. The artist picked up his brush and started sketching Malcolm's portrait. He imagined Malcolm's determined expression, his eyes focused, and the familiar image of him playing his guitar with passion. He knew the portrait had to reflect the spirit of the music Malcolm had created, the bluesy rock riffs that inspired millions of fans around the world. As he painted, the artist thought about how Malcolm was admired by many for his unique style. Influenced by 1950s rock and roll and the blues-based guitarists of the 60s and 70s, Malcolm had developed his own way of playing. Unlike many rock guitarists who cranked up their amps and used lots of distortion, Malcolm preferred to play open chords through Marshall amplifiers, set to low volume. This gave his guitar sound a raw, powerful rhythm without the usual heavy distortion. The artist thought about the many tributes Malcolm had received over the years. In a 2004 interview, Dave Mustaine of Megadeth had named Malcolm among the best rhythm guitarists in the world, alongside Rudolf Schenker of the Scorpions and James Hetfield of Metallica. These were some of the biggest names in rock, and yet, for Mustaine, Malcolm stood out for his steady, unshakable rhythm. As the painting came to life on the wall, the artist thought back to a 2006 punk rock song by the Australian band Frenzal Rhomb, titled Forever Malcolm Young, it was a song written to honor the legend, a way to remember the impact Malcolm had on music. The artist felt a deep connection to that song and to the countless other fans who had been moved by Malcolm's music. As he added the finishing touches to the painting, the street was becoming busier, but no one seemed to mind. People stopped to stare at the vibrant portrait, some taking photos, others just pausing for a moment to reflect. The painting wasn't just a tribute to a guitarist, it was a tribute to the heart and soul of rock and roll, the rhythm that carried AC/DC through decades of music, and to a man who would forever be remembered as a rock legend. The artist stepped back to look at the wall, now filled with the image of Malcolm Young, his guitar held proudly in his hands, the music forever alive in the strokes of paint. The street had become a place of reflection, a place where fans could come together to remember the man who had changed rock music forever. In 2017, Gretsch Guitars honored Malcolm Young with a special reissue of the Gretsch G 613-1MY, a guitar based on his iconic Gretsch Jet Firebird. This guitar was a significant part of Malcolm's career, as he had heavily modified it over the years. It became known as the Beast, a symbol of his unique sound and style. Now, with the reissue, fans of Malcolm and AC/DC could own a piece of history, a guitar that captured the essence of his music. On the day of Malcolm's passing in November 2017, some of the biggest names in rock and metal shared heartfelt tributes to honor him. Eddie Van Halen, Ozzy Osbourne, Lars Ulrich from Metallica, and Dave Mustaine from Megadeth were just a few of the stars who spoke about what Malcolm had meant to them. Other musicians from legendary bands like Guns N' Roses, Billy Idol, Paul Stanley of Kiss, Joe Walsh, Joe Satriani, Def Leppard, and Scott Ian of Anthrax all took to social media or made statements about the loss. Even Foo Fighters, Alice Cooper, Muse, and Vince Neil and Nikki Sixx of Mötley Crüe joined in the outpouring of tributes. At their concerts, many of these artists chose to cover an AC/DC song, paying tribute to Malcolm's legacy. The Foo Fighters and Guns N' Roses were among those who included AC/DC songs in their set lists, with special performances to honor the rhythm guitarist who had shaped rock and roll with his distinctive sound. The tributes weren't just words, they were a celebration of the music Malcolm had given the world and how it had inspired generations of rock musicians. His signature guitar, his riffs, and his steady rhythm were forever linked to AC/DC's sound. Though Malcolm was no longer with them, his music lived on in the hearts of fans and fellow musicians, making his passing a bittersweet reminder of the powerful impact he had on rock music. But was he ever recognized? Over the years, Malcolm Young and his brother Angus Young have been recognized many times for their incredible songwriting and contributions to music, especially through their work with AC/DC. In 1995, Big Gun, written by Angus and Malcolm Young, won the award for Most Played Australian Work Overseas. This showed how much their music was loved around the world. In 2001, their song, It's a Long Way to the Top If You Wanna Rock and Roll, written by Bon Scott, Angus, and Malcolm, was named one of the 10 best Australian songs, coming in at 9th place. In 2006, their famous song Highway to Hell was nominated for Most Played Australian Work Overseas, and the same thing happened in 2007 and 2009. However, in 2009, it actually won the award for Most Played Australian Work Overseas. Also, Rock and Roll Train, written by Angus and Malcolm Young, won the award for Most Played Australian Work Overseas. That same year, the Young brothers were also named Songwriters of the Year. In 2011, their legendary song, Highway to Hell, won the Most Played Australian Work Overseas award once again. In 2015, their songs Play Ball and Rock or Bust were both shortlisted for Song of the Year, showing their continued influence in the music world. In 2022, Shot in the Dark won the Most Performed Rock Work Award, while their song Realize was shortlisted for Song of the Year. These awards and recognitions reflect how Malcolm and Angus Young's music continues to inspire and be loved by audiences all over the world, years after they first made their mark in rock and roll. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.